Hello, welcome to this introduction to the second book in the Freedom series. I'm Deborah Reeves. I wrote the book, and this presentation and all rights to both the book and presentation are reserved. We're going to start right in. We're not going to do preambles on most chapters this time. Chapter 1, Best Laid Plans. Life goes on is such an empty, bitter platitude to those who are grieving. Even though it is an obvious truth, it is a bitter one for those who want to scream, "But why?" Aki knew that he had to carry on. It was what it was expected. Who was he to grieve anyways? His job was to ensure that those who had the right to grieve were all right, and that is exactly what he would do. He knew his duty, and his duty gave his life meaning. Aki was going to London to ensure that Mary Claire's life went on. It had to go on for all the generations of his family. It had to. He wondered how his life had gone on after other blows, and he realized that he had never risked loving deeply until Mary Claire came into his life. He knew that the love he felt for her was unchallengeable, and that, like the sun, she had to rise again. If life were to go on after Philippe's murder, it could not go on the path that they had all been traveling. The path had ended at a cliff, and the cliff had taken its sacrificial offering. No, there had to be another path, and Aki would spend every last centime of effort within him to find the path for Mary Claire. He would set her firmly on the path to her future. That's why he was taking this flight to London. Finding the path and removing the obstacles had become his purpose. Fortunately, he was not the only person who was dedicated to finding another path for Mary Claire. Philippe had left them all with a rudimentary plan, and they were doing their best to hack away at the undergrowth that threatened to ensnare them. The undergrowth of fatigue and sadness, of confusion and of loss of hope, and the tripping, tangling power of old memories. The memories started to cascade back into Aki's mind the second the plane took off, and he was all alone. He was glad that the flight was nearly empty. Maybe it was flying that reminded him of what had happened. He did his best to push it out of his mind in every minute of his waking life, but it stalked him in his dreams. Unfortunately, airplanes seemed to do something that pushed his mind back to Montreal and the terrible events. Once the cascades of memories started, he felt powerless to stop them. As the jet engines roared, the memories flooded back. Aki had hoped that the new success in Oxford would insulate him somewhat, but something about boarding the plane and the sound of the engines took him back. The previous plane ride back to Paris from Montreal had passed in a long extended blur. The flight was not full, so the group was able to huddle together. Oscar's friend, Jean-Claude, had informed the airline that the group was grieving when he booked the flights, and the staff arranged for them to have some space from other passengers. They were particularly helpful when they realized that the man the group was grieving was one of their own pilot's future sons-in-law. The little group did not want or need much. The flight took to the air at 10 p.m., the night they had buried Philippe. Marie sat with Aki holding his hand for a time. Later, when she could not sleep, she went to check on Christine and Emmanuel, who were sitting a few rows ahead of them. Emmanuel asked her to take his seat for a few minutes so Marie and Christine could chat. Christine was Christine had mentioned only moments before that she was going to check on Marie as soon as she got the strength. When Marie arrived next to his seat, he told her that he would go and keep a key company. When he returned 15 minutes later, the two exhausted women were sleeping with their tear-stained faces on one another's shoulders. Marie's splinted hand was laying on Christine's lap on top of a small travel pillow. Neither Emmanuel nor Christine had slept the night before their son's funeral, so Emmanuel was pleased to see that Christine had found a temporary respite from the overwhelming pain of loss. He tucked the blanket from the overhead cabinet around his wife, and he draped another one over Marie. Before the blanket landed, he noticed his mother's ring still on Marie's right hand. He remembered Oscar telling him that the doctor had placed it there while he was operating on her hand. The splint was still in place, so that was the best place for that ring, Emmanuel agreed. It should never be removed from that finger, Christine and he had decided the previous night, as they lay in the darkened room, counting the hours until they had to face the unthinkable, burying their son. Emmanuel smiled just a little and thought of his mother, who had worn that ring until she took her very last breath. When Philippe asked him if he thought it was appropriate for him to offer it to Marie, Emmanuel remembered hugging his beautiful boy and telling him that he never thought anything was more appropriate in his life. That made Philippe smile. Emmanuel would cherish the memory of that smile for the rest of his life. He remembered, too, the tingle of joy and rightness that had filled his chest when Philippe told him that Marie adored the ring and that she had refused to consider getting a new one, even after Philippe had offered to buy her anything she wanted. He remembered Philippe running through the door at Aki's apartment only to stop right in front of his parents. "Mama! Papa! She said yes!" he crowed. Emmanuel fought back tears to ask himself where that beautiful future had gone. After the women were blanketed, Emmanuel turned and went back to the seat next to Aki. "You're stuck with me, I'm afraid. Our women have found a little sanctuary in sleep." Aki signaled the steward and said, "Have a seat, old friend. Colette told me that Marie finally slept near dawn last night and that she dreamt of your son. It helped her. Perhaps sleep will help them both for a little bit. For now, though, we'll have to settle for blunting the reality with a little cognac." When the steward arrived, Aki asked for 2 doubles, and Emmanuel did not object. Not far away, Suzette was running her fingers through Michaud's curls. It always calmed him. His parents were right behind them in the seats that followed, and Josette and Francois smiled at one another when they saw it. They remembered how often they had gone to sleep chuckling about Michaud's newest crush. Some of those girls had been very strange indeed. In the end, though, Michaud had found Suzette, and Francois and Josette agreed to say nothing, one way or the other, to indicate that she was perfect. It did not stop them from praying, though. Of all the prayers of their lives, it might just be that they were most grateful that the ones about Suzette had been answered. She was everything that Michaud needed in a wife. That's the end of chapter 1. Please come back for chapter 2, which is called The Present Realities. I remain your friend Deborah. Bye-bye.